10 huge signs that you or somebody else has an eating disorder coming up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out my resources below. If you want to speak with me, there is a link in the description box. What are some signs that you or somebody else has an ED or an eating disorder? I didn't show all of these signs in my journey, and not everybody is going to show all of these signs, but these are pretty common. It's what I see in the people I work with when I look at my story, and then I look at other stories that I see on social media. These are pretty common. I want to make a disclaimer, this is not an official way to make a diagnosis. Just because you have all 10 of these signs doesn't mean you necessarily have an eating disorder, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And it's not a grading system. It's not like if you have 2 or 3 of these signs, then you don't. But if you have 5 or 6, then you do. Again, this is not a diagnosis. This is educational and entertaining. So what are the 10 signs that you or somebody else has an ED? Let's find out. The first one, the most obvious one, is changes in weight and appearance. Before I had my first ED, I was a normal weight. Nobody commented on it. I was healthy. Then I started losing a lot of weight. You know, my cheeks were, there was this big depression in my cheeks. My neck was thin. I was thin. I had no muscle. Wasn't attractive, certainly wasn't an alpha. People started commenting on it at work, at school. Now I know that you shouldn't comment on people's body size. You shouldn't comment on their weight. You shouldn't ask, have you lost weight? Are you okay? That's not cool, but that's what people do. If you notice that somebody has lost a lot of weight, there are some people who need to lose a lot of weight and they lose it without developing an ED. But I will say that rapid weight loss, especially these extreme diets, that's a telltale sign of me. And speaking of extreme diets, a good sign is somebody adopts some really weird diet. They're eating normally 1 week or 1 month, and then all of a sudden they've adopted some crazy diet. They've gone keto, they've gone vegan, they've cut out this food, they've cut out that food. No sugar, no dairy, no grains. Like, no, 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 no. That's what I did. I was eating a pretty good diet. It wasn't the perfect diet. I mean, it was better than what most college students were eating at the time. And I cut out red meat, most dairy, and anything processed, which is not a bad thing per se. Most people are eating too much of that, in my opinion. But I cut out this, then that, then this, and that, and that. At one point I was eating like fruits, vegetables, puffed grains, which is like eating nothing, some nuts and shrimp, and maybe a protein shake. I had very little fat in my diet. Certainly not enough calories. I would go to the gym, lift weights, but I would never get stronger. I'm like, why am I not getting stronger? Duh. I wanted to get stronger, but I didn't want to feed myself in a way that would allow me to get stronger. I wanted my cake and eat it too. I couldn't make up my mind. Did I want to get stronger? Did I want to look buff? Or did I want to be super lean? Make up your mind. Anyway, a sudden change in diet, a sudden change in habits, a sudden change in routine, that's another sign too. Number 3, large fluctuations in intake. This is really indicative of bulimia and binge eating. Some days you're really good and you're following your diet, you're eating, 1,200, 1,500 calories, sometimes nothing. You say you're fasting. I'm fasting for health. I hear that. I'm fasting. Well, you're fasting for weight loss, or you're fasting to compensate, or you couldn't manage the purge. And then the next day, there's this explosion of calories. It's like this volcano, and it's 5,000, 6,000, maybe even more. I mentioned this in a previous video. The line graph looks like this, okay? Large peaks and valleys. It should look like a relatively straight line, where you're eating more or less the same amount every day. That's homeostasis. That's constant, okay? That's what we want. We don't want this, then this, then this, then this. That's erratic. Okay, the next sign, eating in secret. Most disordered eaters eat in secret. They don't do it in front of other people. You're never gonna binge in front of somebody else. You're never gonna purge in front of somebody else. You're never gonna eat a large volume of junk food in front of somebody else. No, you do all of that in secret. You have all of these candy wrappers in your room, you're watching TV, you're watching YouTube, you're distracted, but you never do it in front of other people. It's kind of like your own dirty secret. In fact, you don't even like eating in front of other people. You don't like going to restaurants, you don't like social events. I'll talk about that later. And part of the reason is because you don't want to eat in front of other people. And when you do, you eat something that's really healthy. I remember every time I went out, I would have something healthy, like a salad, a baked potato, salmon. People would comment and say, "Oh, you eat so healthy." And instead of taking it as a compliment, it actually caused a lot of cognitive dissonance, because I knew what I was doing in the background, and I was eating really healthy in front of them, and I was just putting on this show. I felt like this other person, but I knew that as soon as they left and I was alone in my own room, I knew what I was going to do. So there's this stark contrast. There's eating really well when others are around, and then eating like a monster when you're alone. The next one is personality changes. When I was orthorexic, like in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was a total DB. If you don't know what that means, you can go look it up. But I wasn't a nice person. I was really isolated. Nobody wanted to spend time with me. I just wasn't a pleasant person. My personality had changed. I was always introverted, and I'm still introverted now. But I wasn't funny. I didn't have much of a sense of humor. I didn't want to hang out with other people. I just kind of lived in my own world, which I think is a risk factor for EDs. I was very confused. I was isolated, and people didn't want to hang out with me. I wasn't a DB to everybody. It wasn't like I was mean or anything. I just had no life, no personality. I find this a lot in anorexics, orthorexics, people who don't eat enough. It's like you need a certain number of calories to have a personality, and I wasn't getting that. I was always thinking about myself. I was always thinking about my diet, my fitness, my next run, whatever it was. EDs in a way are selfish. They are selfish because it's all about you. It's all about your health, and it's all about your goals, and you're not thinking about anybody else. I wasn't thinking about anybody else in my life. I wasn't thinking about my family, my coworkers, my classmates. I wasn't thinking about my future. It was all about me now. I guess that's typical when you're 21, 22, 23. But still, it's not a coincidence that my ED started at the most selfish time in my life. As I grew up in my 20s, and then even my early 30s, I developed a personality, a sense of humor. I opened up a little bit, but the behavior sustained itself. Which goes to show you that just because your personality changes and you open up and you mature and you blossom, it doesn't mean the behavior corrects itself. More on that in a future video. The next one is skipping social events. Like I said, I was really isolated in my early 20s, even my mid 20s to an extent. And I've always been introverted. I prefer to make videos and read than to go out. Although these days I'm much more extroverted than I used to be. But when you have this ED, it's like it consumes your whole life. You don't want to do anything else because either you're looking forward to your next episode, your next fix, or you need to compensate. I remember I would say no or decline social events because I needed to fast that day, or I needed to eat very little, and I didn't want to blow it. I was doing so well, I didn't want to go out and have, I don't know. So it was one more cost to my ED, my social life, whatever social life I had. This persisted in grad school and then even in my professional life. You shouldn't dread social events, you should actually look forward to them. This video would not be possible without Estetino Artists. If you want to start your YouTube channel and start producing content, then check out the Creative Business Academy. There is a link below. The next one is consumption of low-calorie foods. A lot of dieters, a lot of people with EDs, anorexics, they only consume low-calorie stuff. Fruits, vegetables, low salt this, low sugar that. Fake versions of real foods. Diet soda, that's another big one. Are they consuming flavored water and diet soda and consuming large amounts of liquid to replace the food that they're not eating? They're trying to trick their minds in a way. They're trying to get some flavor, some oral fixation without the caloric load. I totally get it, but it's another sign. Normal eaters, they don't drink tons of diet soda. They don't eat diet this and low sugar this and low salt that. It's not the real thing. It doesn't satiate you. Either eat the real thing or don't eat it at all. But when you have an ED and you're trying to cut as many calories as possible, that's why you eat it. The next sign is empty wrappers, empty boxes. Binge eaters and disorder eaters are pretty good at hiding things, but they're not perfect. Sometimes they can't destroy all the evidence. They put the evidence in the wrong bag, the wrong bin, and then somebody asks them about it, and then they have to find an alibi. This double life, this secrecy, this inability to interact with other people and be honest, that's one of the worst things about an ED. You always feel like you're hiding something. That's why you have to destroy all the evidence as best as you can. I was pretty good about it. I'd have my own trash bag, and I would put it in the trash bin right before the truck came. And then when I lived on my own, it was even simpler. The next sign is preoccupation with weight and body image. At one point in my life, I didn't care about my body image. I didn't look at myself in the mirror. I didn't weigh myself. Man, those were the days. And then I became super obsessed about it. I measured myself. I weighed myself. I did everything to keep my weight down. I was pretending to be a wrestler or a gymnast or something, and I wasn't. They need to be concerned about their weight. I'm not saying they should restrict. I'm not saying they should be orthorexic. I'm not saying they should skip meals or anything like that. I'm just saying they have to be concerned about their weight and their intake. But I didn't need to be. That's why a lot of disordered eaters are looking at themselves in the mirror. They're checking their body. They're pinching themselves. Oh, that's too much body fat. It's this constant preoccupation with waist size, navel size, weight, body fat percentage. It's an unhealthy obsession. It's okay to have a weight goal, body fat goal, physique goals. Fine, just don't make it the #1 thing in your life. And certainly don't change your whole lifestyle just to meet that goal. And don't wreck your physical and mental health to reach that goal. You want to be healthy, right? The next one is food rituals. The next one is food rituals. I didn't have a lot of food rituals per se, but I've heard a lot of stories. They have to eat in a certain place, has to be at a certain time. They have to have certain forks and knives. They have to have 1 glass of water before they eat anything. They have to chew stuff 48 times before they swallow it. The only food rituals I remember were I had to account for everything I was going to eat. It was like food was so scarce in my life that I didn't want to eat it because I didn't want it to be gone. So I would take a picture, like a mental snapshot of everything that I was going to eat. It's like, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have this. It was like I was thanking the gods for this food. But every bite was so precious that I would sit and like marvel at the meal for 30 seconds before I ate it. I also had a really regimented meal schedule, so I had to eat at this time every day. And if I missed that 3-hour mark, because I had to keep my metabolism going, at least that's what I thought, I would freak out. Oh my gosh, it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. I'm going into starvation mode. Look out for those rituals. It might take some observation, but normal eaters, they don't have a lot of rituals. And finally, weird diet plans. Disordered eaters, they have a lot of rules. They have this whole web of rules that they have to follow. I'm not going to recite all of the rules that I made for myself. I've pointed that out in previous videos, but they almost always have some weird diet plan. I don't eat this, I don't eat that. It has to be prepared like this, it has to look like this. I don't eat this brand, I only eat this flavor. It's exhausting. They can't just eat. Everything has to be analyzed. They have to look at every ingredient on the list. They have to look at every label, and they have to buy everything at Sprouts or Whole Foods or some high-end grocery store because the regular stuff isn't good enough. See, normal eaters, they eat a variety. They eat from most food groups unless they have an allergen. They eat some processed food, the stuff that you would find at a typical grocery store. But disordered eaters, no. It has to be really specific, and it has to be expensive, and it has to exclude all of these things, and it's really inflexible. It's almost impossible to meet it. That's why they don't like going to social events. They don't like other people cooking for them because they don't know what the ingredients are. They don't go to restaurants. They prepare everything on their own. They're cooking everything on their own, and they don't let others cook for them. But my point is, they have such a regimented and bizarre meal plan that nobody else can cook for them. What are some other signs? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you found this video educational and entertaining. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my resources below. If you liked this video, I'm sure you'll like one of the other videos that you see on the screen. Click one of them, and I'll see you there.